The stage was silent. The crowd, usually buzzing with anticipation, sat in an eerie stillness. A figure stepped forward, his movement slow, deliberate. He was old, his face lined with years of solitude. Dressed in a flowing robe, his presence felt out of place under the blinding lights of the modern stage. The judges exchanged glances, confusion clear on their faces. The man stood at the center, hands folded, eyes closed, as if in deep thought or prayer. He did not acknowledge the murmurs in the audience, the whispers questioning who he was, why he was here. A single piece of paper was placed on a table before him. Large, bold letters. "I have not spoken in 50 years." The silence grew heavier. The weight of his presence alone was enough to shift the atmosphere. The camera zoomed in, capturing every wrinkle on his face, every detail of his still posture. He did not bow. He did not wave. He simply stood. And then slowly, he opened his mouth.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is irrelevant, for I have not spoken it in 50 years. 50 years ago, I took a vow not of silence, but of listening. I chose to remove my voice so that I could hear what others could not, what exists in the spaces between words, in the pauses where most do not dare to listen. And in my silence, something else spoke, something old, something patient. I have lived in solitude, away from the noise of men, away from the voices that fill this world. But silence is not the absence of sound. Silence is where they wait, where they whisper, where they are heard. I was called here, not by invitation, not by choice, not by anything you would call living. I was called by a voice without a source, a whisper that does not come from lips, a presence that does not cast a shadow. It does not speak in words, yet I understood. It told me to come, to stand before you, to break the silence. Some of you have already felt it. The shift in the air, the weight in your chest, the unnatural stillness. It has been here long before you. It will remain long after. You may not see it, but it sees you. You may not hear it, but it has always been listening. It is patient. It is waiting. And tonight, it will be heard. You do not need to believe me. You only need to listen. For tonight, my voice is not my own. Do not be afraid. Not yet. Fear comes when the unknown becomes known, when the unseen steps into the light. But before that moment, before what has waited in silence speaks, there is only anticipation, only stillness, only the realization that something is standing beside you, just beyond your sight, just beyond your understanding. I did not come here to entertain you. I did not come here to impress you. I came because I was told to. I came because something has been waiting. Not for you, not for them, for me, for my voice, for this moment. You feel it, don't you? The air is heavy. The stillness is unnatural. You know this is different. You know this is not an ordinary performance. And yet, you stay, you watch, you listen. Do you hear it? Not the sound in this room, not the whispers among you, but the hum beneath it all. The sound that is not sound. It has always been there, waiting. Some of you will hear it now. A low vibration at the base of your skull, a faint pressure in your chest, a distant ringing in your ears. You will try to convince yourself that it is nothing, that your mind is playing tricks on you, that the silence is getting to you. It is not nothing. It is always here. It is always listening. It has waited 50 years for this moment. And now, it will speak. The monk closed his eyes. He inhaled deeply, his chest rising, the folds of his robe barely shifting. The air around him grew impossibly still. The audience felt it before they heard it, an invisible weight pressing against them, like the moment before a storm, like the hush before a whisper. And then he spoke. You do not yet understand what is happening. Some of you feel it as a weight in your chest, an unease settling in your bones. Some of you are dismissing it, convincing yourselves that it is the power of suggestion, the silence playing tricks on your mind. But deep down, in the part of you that still remembers the things we are taught to forget, you know this is real. I have not spoken in 50 years, not a word, not a whisper, and yet my voice has never been truly silent. I have listened to things most cannot hear. I have felt the presence of things most cannot see. And tonight, I am not speaking for myself. My voice does not belong to me anymore. The first time it spoke to me, I was still young. My silence had only just begun. It did not speak in words, nor in thoughts, nor in anything a human mind could recognize. But I understood. It was waiting. It had always been waiting. For 50 years it has stayed with me. It did not ask for prayers. It did not ask for devotion. It asked for only one thing, that one day, when the time was right, I would break my silence and let it speak through me. Tonight is that night. You do not need to understand. You do not need to believe. But you will hear. You will feel. And once you do, you will never forget. The monk lifted his head. The air around him pulsed, invisible yet undeniable, like a ripple in still water. And then the sound began.
In a robe of whispers, I still stand tall. 50 years of echoes down this hall. Ancient chants still woven in my breath. A song of life beyond what's left. The steps I've traced in the temple's dust, each one a hymn in the book of trust. The bell still swings as the years unfold, its voice like a fire in the heart of cold. But it never fades. Through the cracks of time where memory sways, the echoes rise and the walls confide. The monk's voice sings where the years collide. Outside still hum my tune under the glow of a paper moon. The prayers I sowed, they bloom so slow in the garden of years where the ages grow. I see my shadow, young and small, dancing beside these sacred walls. We sang back then with voices clear. That melody lingers even here. Oh, the silence it sings, but it never fades.
The sound grew, not louder, deeper. It stretched through the room, weaving through the silence, seeping into every corner, every space between heartbeats. It was not just a chant, it was a presence. It did not demand to be heard, it simply was. The monk's voice did not belong to him anymore. It was something else now, something vast, something ancient. The air around him shimmered, as though bending under the weight of the sound. A low vibration ran through the floor, faint but undeniable. Some felt it in their bones, others in their chests. A few in the audience clutched their seats, their breathing uneven. The judges sat frozen. One of them reached for their buzzer but hesitated, hand trembling slightly over the button. Something about the moment felt wrong. This wasn't an act. This wasn't a performance. It was something else, something real. The lights above flickered again, this time longer. A hush spread across the audience, not just silence, but absence, as if all the sound in the room had been swallowed, leaving only the monk's voice, endless and unbroken. A woman in the front row shuddered. She clutched her arms, rubbing them as though trying to shake off the cold. But the air wasn't cold. It was still, too still. And then, from somewhere in the far back of the auditorium, a chair creaked. No one had moved. The monk's voice did not stop. The creaking sound echoed through the silent auditorium. No one turned. No one moved. It was the kind of sound that didn't belong, not in a performance, not in a crowd that was sitting perfectly still. The monk's voice continued, steady, unwavering. His eyes were closed, his hands motionless at his sides. The chant did not falter, did not change, but something in the air had shifted. Someone in the audience gasped. Another shivered, rubbing their arms, though the air remained warm. The silence between the monk's words felt thicker, heavier, as if something unseen had settled in the empty spaces. One of the judges leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table. Their lips parted, as if to speak, but no words came. The microphone in front of them let out a soft, crackling static, though no one had touched it. The monk's voice grew deeper. Not louder, just deeper, as though it were no longer coming from him alone. As though something else was speaking with him, just beneath the surface of his voice. The flickering lights dimmed for a moment, then steadied. A woman in the audience turned her head sharply, as if she had heard something behind her. But there was nothing there. Another chair creaked, this time closer. The monk opened his eyes, and the chanting stopped. Silence. True silence. Not just the absence of sound, but something deeper, something unnatural. Something watching. His silence stretched, thick and suffocating, pressing against every chest, filling every corner of the room. No one spoke. No one breathed too loudly. Even the judges, who had spent years witnessing thousands of performances, sat frozen, hands still, eyes wide. The monk stood motionless at the center of the stage. His expression had not changed, but something was different. His eyes, once distant and unreadable, now seemed heavier, darker, as if they had seen something beyond human comprehension. A single breath echoed through the microphone. Not his, not anyone's. Just breath. The chair in the back creaked again, louder, closer. Someone in the audience turned their head sharply, eyes darting through the crowd, searching for movement. But there was none. The stage lights flickered one last time, plunging the room into a split second of darkness. When they returned, the monk was still there, unmoved, silent. But something was missing. The air, the presence, the weight that had settled over the room since he had begun to speak. It was gone. Or perhaps, it had never been there at all. The monk lowered his head. His voice would not be heard again. He had done what he came to do. and whatever had been waiting for 50 years had finally left.